Hey there YouTube, Jens Davidson here. So today is an exciting day because we're actually going to use this iron skillet that we've put so much time and effort into. So I'm going to cook a couple of ribeyes. I'm getting this skillet going here with flaxseed oil, which is the same oil I use for seasoning. Looks like we're already nice and hot. I've had it on the burner for just a couple minutes so far. And we're going to go ahead and throw these steaks in. This is by no means intended to be an instructional video on how to cook steaks, because I am not a chef. But, see if I can't screw this up. I've made a couple pretty good steaks in my time. So the steaks are seasoned with paprika, rosemary, black pepper, pink Himalayan sea salt. What else? I think that's about it. We're going to go ahead and throw some black olives. I'm sorry, not black olives. What are they? Black olives. Garlic. We're going to throw some garlic in there. I've got some already minced up garlic in a jar here. With some olive oil, we're going to put a decent bit in there. And steaks have been in there for about a minute now. We have our tongs, we're going to go ahead and flip. Already getting some very, very nice color on there. I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. Don't need it blazing hot right now. So every minute I'm going to flip them. A little more oil in there. And we're going to put a generous dose of butter on there. Everybody loves butter. This is Irish butter. Put it on top of one, and on top of the other one. And grab this garlic here, now that it's starting to brown up. It's been almost a minute on this side B here. So we're going to flip these steaks again. And again, this is kind of an experiment to see how well this seasoning holds up, since we redid the seasoning on the skillet. We had to, it failed on us in previous videos that the seasoning was coming off after just a few meals cooked in there. That's generally the biggest reason for that, is because the skillet was too smooth and too fine to a finish at the point at which we applied the seasoning. So, that said, learn from our mistakes and we just repeat the process. And I went with a different method for seasoning, or for preparing the skillet. What I did the second time around is I used 80 grit sandpaper. Going to get a nice sear on the back of the steak here. Cooperate. like my steaks rare. I don't know about you guys. Your preference may vary, but I really love rare steak. I love how juicy and tender it is. And I don't care if it's still borderline mooing at me. I'm totally fine with that. I'm going to rub a little bit more garlic on there just to apply it directly onto the steak. The garlic that's in the skillet itself is very nicely blackened at this point. It's freshly charcoal, but the flavor is going into the oil and the butter and everything that's kind of basted throughout the skillet, so that's fine. And kind of checking for tenderness here. Feeling pretty good. I'm going to flip them one more time. For about 30 seconds here, and then I'm going to take them off, let the steaks rest, and then we will I'm going to throw some mushrooms in there. Pull the steaks off here. And we'll grab some mushrooms. One thing with mushrooms, it's always a pain in my neck, is whenever I cook them, I always feel like, oh yeah, I've got a generous bit of mushrooms on there, but after they cook down, I'm like, geez, I should have used a lot more. So I'm going to try and avoid that by using a hell of a lot of mushrooms here, because they're not super filling, so I can eat the heck out of some mushrooms. We're going to switch to olive oil. We're going to reduce the temperature on the stove here a little bit more. Cooking is always so much more fun when you actually had a hand in creating the thing that you're cooking on, like this cast iron skillet right here. Just let's see, a week ago, a little more than a week ago, week and a half ago, this skillet was sad and alone and depressed, living out the rest of its life, so it thought, on the shelf of an antique store, forgotten and neglected, and hadn't cooked meals in Lord who knows how many years. And all of a sudden I came along and I saw it and had pity on it and rescued it from that antique store. Put a whole bunch of labor of love into it, and now it is back on an oven. And a couple days ago it was inside a smoker grill, doing exactly what it's doing right now. I had mushrooms, potatoes, shallots in the skillet cooking down, while I had steaks on the grill itself. Goodness, that was delicious. So yeah, it's really rewarding to put your own effort into something that you're cooking with. Another example of that is the knife that I'm going to use as my steak knife. That's right here. This little knife is my steak knife. I created this knife. The blade portion of it was a wheel bearing, the race of a wheel bearing, and I took that and heated it up in my blacksmithing forge and hammered it out into a flat, planer bar, nice and thin. And then with a little bit of grinding, I ground and isolated a tang section, and then ground a blade out of it. And then I took a couple pieces of some nice hardwood maple, and I chiseled the profile of the tang at half the thickness of the tang. I chiseled that into each half of the knife blank, or I'm sorry, not the knife blank, the handle blank, so that when I put the two halves of the handle over the knife blade itself, over the tang, I would have a very nice fit. The knife wouldn't have any play. It was a nice snug fit, and the two halves of wood came together seamlessly. And so at that point in time, I loaded it up with epoxy, glued the whole thing together, and then used a belt sander to profile the handle into a very simple oval shape. Nice ergonomic, small handle, petite if you will, and then I ground and profiled the blade, put a bevel on there. Well, I guess I should say I heat treated it too, to the best of my abilities, prior to epoxying the handle in there, but you get the idea. I'll do some videos on knife making eventually when I get my blacksmithing operation here in Wisconsin set up. I have to do some surgery on my anvil stand because it broke. I didn't do a very good job of welding the legs on it. But that'll be a future video. These mushrooms are looking pretty good. The steak's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and call it quits here. The skillet looks gorgeous. I think it did the trick. And I'll get back to you guys after I'm done cleaning everything up, so we can take a look at the skillet and see whether or not that seasoning held up after its first meal of cooking a couple of ribeyes here. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll get back to you in a little bit.